One of the first of what would unfortunately become many instances of disturbing crimes being broadcast live on Facebook was when four black thugs in Chicago broadcast themselves torturing a white mentally handicapped man who was bound, gagged, and had his clothes and hair slashed with a knife. National news outlets were hesitant to report on it at first for the usual reason. They didn't want to show black people committing a hate crime against a white person, and it wasn't until the horrifying video went viral on social media that the major networks finally mentioned it. But a report that CBS aired about the incident is one of the most misleading segments ever produced by a national news outlet. The report aired on CBS radio stations as part of the top of the hour news break and began with the announcer saying this.
The viral video of a beating and knife attack in Chicago suggests the assault had racial overtones. CBS's Dean Reynolds tells us the victim is described as a mentally challenged teenager.
In the video, he is choked and repeatedly called the N-word. His clothes are slashed and he is terrorized with a knife. His alleged captors repeatedly referenced Donald Trump.
Police are holding 4 people in connection with the attack.
While technically correct, there couldn't be a better example of a misleading report. In reality, the victim was white and the perpetrators were black, and while the attackers were referencing Donald Trump, they were saying F Donald Trump and F white people. The victim was called the N-word because that term, as you likely know, is often used as both an insult and a term of endearment. And yes, black people call white people the N-word as an insult to intimidate them all the time. CBS never apologized for the misleading report after it was widely denounced online. They just ignored the criticism and pretended like nothing happened. Their report was so backwards, it couldn't have been just from a producer getting the basic facts wrong. It must have taken some serious mental gymnastics for them to twist the story around 180 degrees from what actually happened to give the listeners the impression that a group of racist Trump supporters attacked a black man. The perpetrators were thankfully apprehended and charged with multiple felonies, including hate crimes, for the attack. But this is far from an isolated incident of CBS presenting stories in a false light to either protect liberals or smear conservatives. For example, CBS doctored an interview with Bill Clinton when he was asked about Hillary's infamous fainting incident shortly before the 2016 election in order to omit Bill's embarrassing gaffe that such a thing happened frequently. The interview originally aired on PBS, but when CBS aired it later that day, they deceptively edited out the part where Bill said it happened, quote, frequently. And because that would have been an obvious jump cut, they actually inserted a brief clip of Charlie Rose over the edit as a reaction shot so viewers wouldn't notice the quick edit. CBS News' investigative correspondent Sharyl Attkisson, who worked for the network for 20 years, resigned in 2014, citing the network's liberal bias, and said that it was a struggle to get her reports on air, meaning CBS kept censoring them. And she later published a book titled Stonewalled: One Reporter's Fight for Truth in Obama's Washington. In the later part of her career, she investigated the Benghazi attack as well as Operation Fast and Furious, a covert gun-running scheme where the U.S. government transferred weapons to Mexican drug cartels in what many believe was a false flag operation to blame American gun stores for firearms ending up in the hands of narco groups. So Sharyl Attkisson wasn't just a reporter, she was investigating some very serious scandals the Obama administration didn't want people to know about. A year before her resignation, she had learned, and CBS News confirmed, that her computer had been hacked into by a sophisticated hacker on multiple occasions when she was investigating the Benghazi cover-up. Just a month earlier, it was revealed that Obama's Justice Department had secretly obtained the emails and phone records of Fox News White House correspondent James Rosen, trying to find out who his sources were. So most likely some deep state operatives in the NSA or CIA were snooping around Sharyl Attkisson's computer to see what she was working on and who she was talking to. The CIA admits that they hacked into the computers of members of the Senate Intelligence Committee when they were investigating the CIA's detention and interrogation program, the torture programs under the Bush administration, because the CIA wanted to know who their sources were and how much they knew. So if the CIA would illegally hack into the computers of the very congressmen who are tasked with overseeing their activities, why wouldn't they hack into the computers of reporters who are also investigating their unethical and illegal actions? The fact that these crimes are all but ignored by the mainstream news networks shows that they are complicit in the cover-up. While CNN is the epitome of fake news, CBS has a long history of it too. Just 2 months before the 2004 presidential election, CBS's show 60 Minutes aired a fake news story about George W. Bush's military service record based on forged documents. The fake documents cast doubt on the quality of Bush's service in the Air National Guard and indicated that he was given preferential treatment, but various bloggers immediately began scrutinizing them and found inconsistencies in the jargon as well as the typography between the fonts used in the documents versus the fonts that actual documents of that kind had. If real, they would have been typed in the 1970s, but appeared to have been created using Microsoft Word upon closer inspection. For 2 weeks, CBS anchor Dan Rather stuck by his story, but skepticism from those on the internet kept growing, causing other news outlets to cover the controversy, so CBS reluctantly had to finally address it. The documents, it turns out, were a dirty political trick that CBS either willfully or negligently fell for. Of course, in more recent years, their reporting hasn't gotten much better. Their flagship show, 60 Minutes, did an investigation into fake news shortly after Donald Trump won the 2016 election and featured several websites as examples, which were actually parody or satire websites, not actual fake news websites. Who could possibly not get the humor in a headline like, "After colonoscopy reveals brain tumor, Donald Trump drops from race"? To call parody and humor sites fake news sites is not only disingenuous, but it waters down the entire argument of those who are supposedly trying to prevent fake news from spreading. After a left-wing lunatic tried to assassinate Republican members of Congress while they were practicing for a charity baseball game during the summer of 2017, CBS News anchor Scott Pelley opened the broadcast that night, saying the attack may have been self-inflicted, meaning Republicans' racist policies caused the gunman to retaliate against them because that's what you do to Nazis. The story of the ambush and attempted murder of the Republican congressman on the baseball field was quickly dropped because the liberal media didn't want people to keep using it as an example that their constant stream of fake news, painting Donald Trump and his supporters as the resurgence of Hitler's Third Reich, had incited a mentally unstable liberal to attempt to assassinate a group of congressmen. You may find it interesting to know that the majority shareholder of CBS's parent company, Viacom, before he died in 2020, was Sumner Redstone, who was once caught on tape trying to convince a reporter to reveal their source about an embarrassing leak within MTV, one of his networks, and on tape can be heard saying that he's not going to have the leaker killed, he just wants to talk to them. Redstone, who was 87 years old at the time, also told the reporter that he would be well rewarded and well protected if he gave up his source. That's the kind of man who was in control of CBS for a decade, a man who bribes reporters in order to reveal their sources when they publish a damaging story to the network or their affiliates. When you think of fake news, you tend to think of CNN, but the big three broadcast networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC, are almost just as bad sometimes. Me, however, I'm an independent media analyst, and I'm also an author, and if you like my videos, I know you're going to love reading my books, so order The True Story of Fake News, How Mainstream Media Manipulates Millions, in paperback from Amazon.com, or download the ebook from Kindle, iBooks, Nook, or Google Play. And, of course, there's a link to the Amazon listing in the description below, so head on over there and check it out.